So for those who aren't familiar with us, what do we do? The main thing that we do is we handle disputes between consumers and merchants in consumer transactions. And those are transactions that are primarily for family, household, personal, or agricultural purposes. With limited exception, if you've paid money out in the marketplace and you're unhappy with the results, chances are we have jurisdiction. The main exclusions are landlord-tenant, anything that sounds like malpractice, and anything that has to do with insurance. But otherwise, we can try to help. One of the things we started a few years ago was this business-to-business mediation program. A lot of small businesses are like humans because they're usually, sole proprietorships or single member LLCs. And so in many respects, they are actually very similar to being a person. But because our jurisdiction is limited to being able to enforce and investigate only consumer transactions, we did start this business-to-business mediation program. And so those I primarily handle. If I can't negotiate a resolution, then we do have experienced formal mediators who volunteer their time with us, who can then bring a more formal mediation process to bear to try and help small businesses avoid the cost of litigation. The other thing that we do is we provide consumer specialists to be able to answer your questions, whether by phone, email, or in person. But right now with the pandemic, our front office is closed, so email is the best way to go. We do enforce the consumer protection laws for the county. So if in the process of investigating a complaint, we find that there's been a violation of the law, our investigators are allowed to file for civil citations or criminal charges. And so we do have the enforcement ability that other consumer agents, consumer organizations like the Better Business Bureau doesn't have. Obviously, we do outreach and education to the community like this program, and we also license and regulate certain businesses. So if you're getting your car worked on, they should have our registration. If you're buying a new home, they should be licensed by us. If anyone's coming into your home to fix an appliance or a consumer electronics, they should be registered with us, and more of the high-end, high-value secondhand good dealers should have our license as well. And hopefully, if you're never towed, but if you are towed, know that we do also register and regulate towing entities as well. So to talk about holiday and COVID scams, I kind of want to put everything in context with some general statistics. So in 2019, about an estimated 50% of all the calls that came to your cell phone were from robodialers. So you were not imagining that your phone was constantly ringing with scam calls. However, the eConsumer.gov only had 40,000 or so reported cases of international scams with only $151 million in losses. And I say only 151, and you'll see why. Consumer Sentinel, which is the FTC database, had 91,000 reported losses from international scams with $276 million lost. Even if you put those two together, these scams that originate from outside of the US is still incredibly underreported. And that's only numbers for scams coming out of the US. So what kind of scams are we seeing that are specific to COVID? June of 2020, the Hetherington Group said that just for New York and New Jersey, about 100 seniors paid over $1 million for grandparent scams. So for COVID, it could be, grandma, I'm in hospital, I'm in jail, everybody's got COVID, you got to pay money to get me out. But of course, whoever's calling is crying and it's hysterical, and therefore the voice is unrecognizable. We've been hearing reports, and if you're following us on social media, you saw the article that we posted today, that it's now coming up with these texts that are coming in to parents and grandparents with dismembered body parts claiming to be from MS-13 and saying, if you don't pay up, your child is next. So these scams are just really, really heinous. Checkfish said that when the IRS announced a stimulus package was coming, 180,000 fake websites popped up to steal stimulus money or your personal information for stimulus money, or posing as payment protection plan outlets so that they were getting your account information and your business information as well. The FTC has issued over 200 warning letters to companies selling bogus prevention and cures for COVID. Kentucky reported fake drive-up COVID testing because they were trying to either steal your insurance data or your copay or any kind of personal information, maybe like your social security number. The Maryland Secretary of State issued a warning on fake charities. The concern was folks that were trying to get money towards charities that were providing health heroes care packages or assistance to folks that have been out of a job, maybe to help food get to those that are in need. And unfortunately, you have legitimate charities doing the very things, and then you've got folks that are not real and just riding their goodwill. The FTC has also issued a lot of warnings about pop-up websites. They pop up, they advertise on social media, Facebook and Instagram mostly, and they don't have any PPE to sell. They just have pictures that they advertise, but they never ship, and they just try to get your money. And the WSSC had to issue an alert about unnecessary water filters when folks were talking about the COVID being in droplets from which you're breathing. The scammers decided to extend the concept of droplets to actual water and started pitching for unnecessary water filters. So who is usually targeted? Obviously seniors, because there's a belief there's a nest egg. Folks are a little more polite and trusting. They underreport fraud, and they likely to live alone and therefore don't have a sounding board, any issues that come up. Millennials have been a rising target because they're too comfortable online. They trust glossy websites very easily, and unlike seniors and those that are in between, they don't have the financial literacy experience or education to be able to spot a scam. And that's who is normally we would see are targeted. So who's targeted today? As the picture shows, pretty much anybody and everybody. Everybody is now targeted because COVID has brought to bear a situation that every segment of our population, from children on to seniors, are now targeted because of the pandemic. We're going to talk about how everybody is now at risk. So there's a little bit of a feedback, by the way. I'm not sure whose microphone that is. I'm just letting you guys know. The common type of scams out there are healthcare, when they're trying to steal your Medicare ID or your insurance information, investment scams. The SEC and FINRA had to put out warnings about folks that were trying to get you to invest in companies that had preventions or cures, and these companies didn't exist, much less be working on preventions or cures for COVID. IRS, in addition to the normal tax identity theft, there's obviously, we talked about the 180,000 fake websites, mail fraud, work from home scams, and we'll talk about how money mules work in later on, but those have been coming through the mail. Grandparent scams, we talked about. Unfortunately, with so many people having died because of this disease, funeral and cemetery exploitations could be an issue. Woodchucks is a perennial giver of scams, and we'll talk about that at length later. You have got to have at least received one phone call that your social security number has been inactivated, and if you haven't, you count yourself lucky. With the pandemic and the financial problems that are out there, we've been seeing and hearing about a lot of debt assistance with school loans, with mortgages. A lot of mortgage assistance fraud is happening out there. Anytime you're dealing with debts, the first thing that anyone's going to ask you is, what's your social security number? We need to pull a credit report, and that's the keys to your kingdom, if you will. And utility cutoff. Now that it's getting colder, you're going to be getting calls that Pepco's about to cut off your power. You haven't paid in 3 months. And by the way, you have to pay in a gift card. Gift cards are for gifts. And if you can pass that mantra on to anyone and everyone you know, I think that would be a terrific way to try and help with this particular scam. So what are the common holiday scams that we're seeing? Online shopping. So the fake pop-up websites are not limited to PPE. If folks can later go onto our website, we actually have a newsletter that has examples of these fake pop-up websites that are selling gym equipment, shoes, what have you, and it's the same pictures, the same videos, the same glossy advertising, the same wording, but the website has, there's several different website names selling it, and they're all bizarre names, like things that you wouldn't expect. And they are primarily advertising, as I mentioned, through Facebook and Instagram, and using Shopify to give them a sense of legitimacy as a marketing platform. And so you have to check out through Shopify. These items just, they don't exist. You're not going to get them. And we're seeing a lot of those. The FTC just shut down a bunch of companies that were selling Lysol and Clorox products. And the website names were CloroxClean.com or LysolForYou.com and things like that. So you have to be very careful when buying online that you research the website as much as you research the goods and the prices. And this becomes very important. Gift card scams. In addition to not giving gift cards to pay for bills when someone calls you over the phone, if you're going to buy gift cards, make sure you're buying them from behind the counter. There's a lot of folks that are going through the racks that are on this side of the register and tampering with it so they can get the numbers on the back. And then they collect all this, they wait for you to buy it, load money on it, and they immediately drain it off. So by the time you give that gift card as a gift, it's empty. And this happened actually to my son. Within minutes of him buying a gift card, it had been used to pay for a phone bill and a gas bill up in Baltimore. So this is a real risk. A lot of e-tailers have digital gift cards, so you can download that and email that. I know it's not as pretty as, you know, being able to put it in an envelope and mail it, and we'll talk about why you shouldn't mail it in a minute, but that's an alternative as well. Shipping notification scams. You probably have been getting a lot of texts that says, you know, click here, you know, we've got information about a FedEx, UPS, USPS delivery that it's on its way. This is either going to download a virus or engage you in some kind of a sharing of information that is meant to be able to get into your accounts. So just delete those messages. Coupons and special offers, you're going to get those in emails. You're going to get those in your text as well. And I have examples in a bit in one of our slides coming up of both of these scams. Porch pirates are shoplifters, but they just steal from your front porch. So they wait until something's delivered, they drive around and they steal. Mail marauders are those that are stealing out of your mailbox. So they're looking for checks, they're looking for gift cards. If you're going to be mailing checks or gift cards, whether it's as a holiday gift or for bills or whatever, use a blue mailbox or take it to the post office. Charity scams. Holiday season is huge for charities. It's also huge for fake charities. And the OCP actually did an expose on scam packs last year. So a real charity has to do a lot of disclosure about their finances. PACs don't. And so charities are now moved to the Federal Election Commission instead of to the state secretary of state for a particular state, because they don't have to report as much. And so you may be getting calls for volunteer firefighters, first responders, police, cancer, claiming that that's what they're doing. They won't disclose that they're a PAC. And what they ultimately do is maybe use 1% of what they collect to do like a radio ad somewhere in some obscure market, and maybe pay towards some candidate not even in your area. So this particular scam pack was claiming to collect for volunteer firefighters in Rockville. Not a single ad or a single political donation went to anybody in Maryland, let alone Montgomery County. So be very wary of charities, Charity Navigator, give.org, GuideStar. There's a lot of research websites that are devoted to helping you vet your charities. Any questions so far, Kevin?
Yes, we have a question. And I'll read it. Is education the best tool or enforcement? And also, follow-up question is, how often are scammers actually caught and a scam stopped?
So the first question was education.
Is education the best tool?
Education is a great tool for enforcement, because if they don't get you, then enforcement no longer becomes necessary. So it is the first line offense, which is a great defense, right? That's the motto also in football as well, but it applies here as well. And then the second question was,
how often are scammers actually caught and a scam stopped?
So what is really important is what I started off the hour with, which is scams are underreported. If you forward the scam texts and the scam emails to the FTC, and they start to collect that information. The FCC also has a collection. What they do is they collect a lot of information, and they start to put together a picture of who the actor is, and then they move. So I think it was last year, after 2 years of collecting data, they worked with Indian authorities and shut down the company that was doing all those tech support scams, which, by the way, they're back because everybody's at home and everyone's going to need tech support. So it is a bit of like playing whack-a-mole, but it does happen. Enforcement happens within the US. They shut down another call center in Chicago last year. They've shut the one down in India. It happens. It may seem like it takes forever, but trying to find a call center in a foreign country that's working off the grid is difficult. But the FTC, the FCC, they do work, and the FBI, they're involved if they're dealing with money that's lost. They will work hard and they will try to put it out. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the other helpful tools that are available in a minute. So what is the general script of all the frauds we're going to talk about, right? It's one of two things. They're either going to scare you with someone's going to get hurt or you're going to get arrested, or they try to get on your emotions in another way, a more positive way. We have a deal for you. Your neighbor recommended me. I can make you a great deal. This won't last forever. The ultimate goal at the end of this pitch is, I want money, I want information, or I want both. So the scripts are always going to be very much alike. So telephone scams, I think, are the biggest headache for most people, especially if you're in a vocation where you have to answer the phone. My husband's a realtor. He has no choice but to answer all the calls because he never knows if that number is from a prospective client or not. So what are the main tricks that phone scammers are using? With voice over IP, you could be in the Ukraine, you could be in the Caribbean, you could be anywhere. And you can make it look like you're calling from someone next door to the call recipient, which is how you get all the calls that claim to be from Pepco, Sheriff's Office, the IRS, numbers that you know. And again, the whole point of it is to catch you unawares if you're thinking you're picking up a call from a neighbor. rather than, you know, who's this person calling me? Do I really know them? I always tell this story. It's a true story. I was home alone. My cell phone rings and the number is my home phone. So this tells you that they can literally clone pretty much any number they want. So phone scams is another one that's really, really underreported. And as you can see, the numbers that I have from the FBI's Internet Crime Report for 2018, it only has 26,000 phone scams, which I'm sure you get that many calls in a year. So that tells you like how underreported phone scams can be. If you lose money, you report it to the FBI's ic3.gov. If you just want to provide the caller, the name of the company they claim to be calling from and what the main pitch was, that goes to the FTC and the FCC. So one of the tools that I mentioned that's coming up is the FCC is now getting really aggressive. They've warned 12 voice over IP companies about assisting and facilitating phone scams. Remember, they can't do what they do without voice over IP. And so like the FTC went after Western Union for allowing its business to be freely used by the Nigerian Prince scam and other scams originating out of Nigeria because they were happily taking the money of the transaction. The FCC is now starting to really lean on the voice over IP providers. So the best way to do this is to trust your instincts and avoid. So you screen your calls. You've got voicemail and you don't have to take the calls if you're not in the line of business where calls are coming in all the time. Screen them, let your voicemail pick up, let the answering machine at home pick up, and just screen the calls. If you pick up and you hear that empty air, you know that's a machine calling you, hang up. If it's a solicitation, a threat, or any kind of harassment, hang up. And as I always say, remember, IT department never calls you when you need help. You have to go reach out to them first. If you're on a phone with someone and they're very, very legitimate sounding, but just you're not entirely sure you're really talking to your bank, hang up and then call back on a number you have. You don't want to call them back on a number they give you because that's just the guy in the next cubicle to them. It may not be anyone in the bank or Amazon or whoever it is they're claiming to be calling you from. You want to do your research. If they're selling you something, research the company and the word scam. See if other people have been getting these phone calls and what has been the end result of the transaction. Don't say the word yes. They can be recording you and try to slam you into some sort of a monthly subscription, and now they got you saying yes that you agree. So it's full contact avoidance really when you're dealing with phone scammers. Technology aids. I think anyone who's got a cell phone, all the major carriers, and I don't know about the more minor ones, but they have free apps that will help you flag spam or unknown callers. If you don't have one, you can obviously go with No More Robo or Truecaller, which are the two the Consumer Reports recommended as being a little more robust. On your landline, if you're not dealing with like Verizon Fios or a Comcast-based phone line, which I think they can turn on some kind of technology or call blocking or call flagging at the source and you need equipment, then Digit One, HQ Telecom, and Sentry were recommended by Consumer Reports. The regulatory change that happened this year was the Stir-Shaken protocol. I call it James Bond protocol. But what it is requiring carriers to do is to verify the number, right? So it'll tell you if that number is verified because now you know the person that's calling you isn't spoofing you from a call center in South Asia, for example. So that just tells you the number is real. It doesn't tell you that the person calling you isn't a bad person. So the major carriers have pretty much rolled it out. They're really working on cross-carrier verification. So can Verizon verify that someone calling on T-Mobile is correct? That's something they still have to work on. The Trace Act said that, compliance with Stir Shaken can't cost you and I anything, but this has got to be no additional cost to consumers. The FCC has more penalties and more tools to enforce, and they're required to do some rulemaking to further protect us as consumers from spam calls and texts. Any questions so far? Oh, okay.
No questions so far.
Okay. So what kind of phone scams have we been seeing with COVID-19? I have some audio clips, but somehow they end up running together. So all four of them play if I start playing one of them, and I haven't figured out how to fix that. But they were offering insurance that was specific to COVID, free COVID tests, student loan workouts, travel cancellation, contact tracing, charities, you name it, the phone scam existed for it. Along the bottom of this slide, we've got a website that we created about that had all kinds of resources for consumers about how has COVID-19 impacted consumer transactions. So if you have any questions, I try to update that fairly regularly. I think I need to go back in and update given recent events in the county.
Hey, Tracy?
Yeah.
One question did just come in. I'll read it. The question reads, as someone contracting with the Montgomery County Holiday Giving Project and with Toys for Tots, gearing up to recruit not just agencies to serve families, but also toys, gifts, cards, donations from individuals and businesses, how can I ensure the public that we are legit? I try to always do county websites or TFT contact info, but there are more I can be doing to be more safe.
So if the underlying organization that's doing this, so every charity has to be registered with the Maryland Secretary of State. So if that is how you would classify your business, you should make sure you're registered with the Secretary of State. And that's sort of the first step, because once you're registered there, then you at least have got the state saying that you are a charity that they are acknowledging, monitoring, and overseeing. And then in theory, GuideStar, Give.org, Charity Navigator, and those kinds of rating organizations will then be able to pick you up and be able to provide more information. But if those kinds of projects are county sponsored and you are part of the team that is working through the county, I would probably suggest contacting the agency that's overseeing this program. I'm sure they've got some kind of a list of acknowledged vendors or partners that you can then show that here you are on the county website and you've got legitimacy that way. Without knowing more about the program, and I'm sorry I don't really know enough about it to be any more specific than that. I hope that was enough.
And I have a question, Tracy. Just as you're ramping up on the holiday scams and getting into COVID-19, can you share some insight on maybe some common scams that
has made coronavirus testing?
Sorry, see, this is what happens with that slide. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Kevin.
Oh, that's okay. What are some common scams that on a local level, like in the county, that historically Consumer Protection has had calls, inquiries, or have investigated as it relates to holiday scams here in the county?
Okay, well, unfortunately, everything we've talked about, we have either heard about from consumers, we've seen local news reports discussing them, and you'll see later on, I'm actually using my own email and texts to provide some examples of some of these scams. So as we go through, I think we'll be able to see what we are seeing here and getting calls and consumer inquiries about. Obviously, the biggest thing aside from phones are going to be what you're going to get from a cybersecurity basis. So identity theft, which is one of the bigger risks, is when someone steals your identity and then uses your information without your permission. It's like the opposite of a power of attorney. Most folks understand that identity theft is going to have an impact on finances or credit history, but medical care can be impacted, because if someone is pretending to be Kevin Simpson, but in like Kentucky, and they're allergic to medication that can save the real Kevin's life, there may be some contraindication in the medical records. You may not be able to get life insurance because the fake Kevin has had a heart attack, that kind of thing. So medical care is the sleeper risk of identity theft. It takes a lot of time to fix. So where is this data, right? You're giving out data everywhere. You're giving it out to restaurants because you want a coupon for your anniversary. You're giving it out to your doctors online when you're buying things. Grocery stores because you want the sale price. Obviously, your work has your information. It's really, really key to make sure that you're only giving what the transaction needs. And a lot of doctors' offices still, as a matter of habit, ask for your social. They don't need it. I have not provided my social security number to anyone, any physician, in years, and it's never impacted my ability to get care or to get insurance reimbursement. Restaurants and grocery stores don't need to have your real birthday. If you're looking to get an anniversary coupon for your birthday or anniversary, pick a date in the same month and you'll still get the coupon. So it's just really important to be very picky as to who gets what as a means of protecting yourself. The kinds of scams that are coming, they're coming in one of four ways: phishing, smishing, vishing, which was a new word for me, and hacking. Phishing is phony phishing. You are giving information through emails, and if you haven't gotten your sextortion scheme email yet, count yourself lucky. With all the data breaches out there, the bad guys have one of your old passwords. And so they lend some kind of credence and legitimacy when they say, here's your password and I know what you've been doing on your computer and you got to pay me in Bitcoin. So that's one that's been going around that everyone that I know has gotten that. Smishing is the same kind of phishing, but it's through texts or messaging apps like WhatsApp or social media. Vishing is through voice. So the phone scams that leave you messages, or they call you, say press 1 if you want to be taken off, or press 2 if you want to engage. Don't press any numbers. Either way, you're in a world of trouble with them, because now they know the phone number is a good number and they'll call back. And all those three, you're giving access to information. You're giving access to your cell phone, to your computer. Hacking is the opposite. It's a breaking into a system to steal data without your permission. And so these four weave themselves throughout the next segment that we're going to discuss. COVID-19 cyber scams, as you can imagine, cover the gamut. The latest we've been hearing about are fake clinical trials, because they're trying to get on the promise of, hey, we'll pay you $1,000 to be a volunteer, but please provide us some information. And of course, as you can imagine, they want your account number to deposit the money, and they want your social security number, etc. Obviously, there was all sorts of emails that are going to offer you PPE or virus tracking or contact tracing, fake products. You just have to be very, very careful about what you're seeing when it comes to these kinds of cyber scams. So these are 4 examples from my very own system. So the shipping notification one that we talked about is going to be at the bottom left of your screen. That's the FedEx one. If you click on any of those links, it will take you either to download unintentionally a virus or a malware, or it'll ask you to engage in some kind of a process to share information, or possibly both. Fake coupons, that's going to be the top right. If you notice, it doesn't even identify the business. It's been a while and we miss you. Here's a special coupon. Real special, because it's probably going to cause you a world of hurt. Fake websites, they don't really have a product to sell, and that's the CVS one. If you notice, it spells bonus wrong, and it's just full of really weird spelling and capitalization. With the CVS one we've seen, and we actually had a complaint on this, when you click on this, if you don't download a virus, they basically are going to give you something for free. You just have to pay for shipping and handling. And in this particular case, this gentleman ended up with a flashlight that he had to pay. It was free. That was his reward from CVS. And then he ended up in some kind of a subscription program. And so we were able to finally track this down to a home in Washington State. So, you know, we do end up getting domestic homegrown scams, and that CVS one is where it led us. And then the top left is an example of vishing. As you can see, I'm apparently, I've had some suspicious activity, and the reserve system is calling me. If you notice, the English is very, very suspect. It was a computerized voice. It was clear that English was typed into Google Translate and then used as a voice over through the computer system. That transcription is literally what the voicemail said. It wasn't even a bad transcription of the voicemail. So that's another clear sign that you're dealing with a scam. How do you deter cyber scams? You want to shred your documents. You don't want to give out personal information. Social security number, driver's license, insurance. Those are the big three. You don't click on unsolicited emails. You don't click on unsolicited texts or messages in messaging platforms. Use password phrases. I always use the example, I love kumquats. I don't know why, but the S is a $, the O is a 0, and the A becomes an @ sign. So you have a phrase, you mix up letters, numbers, and symbols, initial caps, upper and lowercase. Phrases are a lot harder to break through than simple passwords. You want to make sure you have a virus and malware software on all of your computers, and remember, your cell phone and your tablets are computers as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about not putting checks in the mail because of check washing, but obviously if they steal your mail now, they have your bank account information and can make counterfeits. Issues for businesses and employees right now. Everyone's got, well, not everyone, but most folks have got their employees working from home, and there's real unique issues now and challenges for employees and businesses. What is the security, the Wi-Fi security at home? You know, are your employees having WPA 2 or 3? Those are the ideal. You know, how have you taught them to be aware of phishing? Because right now, bad guys know your employees are at home. They know they're stressed. They know they're anxious and maybe don't have the support that they need from an IT perspective. So they are going after them with a vengeance and leading to ransomware. Folks are at home. They're mixing personal and work. What does that environment look like? What's the password protection and encryption? Are you providing the equipment? Are they using the same equipment that their kids play video games on and maybe are downloading malicious software that can now have access to your work information? As I mentioned before, tech support scams are increasing, payment protection plan, the applications. There's a lot of fake ones coming that were out there. Now that we're coming into the season of loan forgiveness applications, I expect that to be on rise with fake websites again. Unemployment was a huge, huge problem, and it'll continue to be because it was a lot of folks were having their identity stolen to be able to make claims and steal unemployment benefits. This Nigerian crime ring had siphoned off hundreds of millions of dollars in unemployment benefits by using stolen credentials and then hiring money mules as employees from work from home. So folks here in the US thought they were working and getting money and then had to do things to send money out. And so they became a conduit as a money mule, thinking they were actually getting paid a legitimate wage. We've heard about folks getting terminated and told to click on a Zoom link so that they can talk to their boss. And by signing into this particular Zoom link, they were stealing credentials. Folks use the same password or passphrase, and you shouldn't. And so by getting the password in for Zoom, they, in theory, were now able to guess at the password the folks were using across all platforms. So that was a big risk. And a lot of, and we actually heard about this college graduate who had gotten a fake job offer to do data entry from home. He did a whole interview on Google Hangout. And so they sent him money that he had to deposit in his own account to then be able to buy software to work. And this is how the money mule scheme works. He deposits a bad check, turns around, writes a good check to buy something, and that the software is actually the way the company is getting their money back. But if the check is no good, then this was a complete scam and you're not even getting anything but scammed. So fake job offers and fake interviews are really, really increasing right now. How can you detect if you've been a victim of identity theft? Bills. Are you missing any bills? Are you getting new bills? Are you getting denials for credit? Are you getting denied insurance or medical care? These are big red flags that something's going on. You should get your credit report. And if you notice, I've got more than just the big three. Everybody knows Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, but I'm listing 5. You should know that there's over 350 consumer reporting agencies out there collecting data on you, on every aspect of you, and selling it to third parties. We are a huge hot commodity for these agencies, but these 5 are credit reporting agencies, which is a type of a consumer reporting agency. And Novus is primarily used by landlords, but it's becoming used more and more by non-landlord merchants. It doesn't provide a credit score, but it is a credit reporting agency. National Consumer Telecommunication and Utilities Exchange, as the name implies, telecom and utility companies use it. So if you freeze your credit with the big 3 and miss NCTUE, someone can still open an account in your name at T-Mobile and buy 10 phones in your name. So if you're going to freeze your credit, you should hit all 5. You should get your credit report. You get 1 free a year. And if you have been a victim of identity theft, the FTC has some really good resource. And there's the Identity Theft Resource Center, which is a nonprofit, which has got some really good information as well. Any questions before I go on?
No questions, Tracy.
Okay. So I mentioned early on that even kids were victims of cyber crime during the pandemic. So it's important to teach kids about cyber safety at any time, but especially now. So it's really important to start to teach them to share less. Like if you can keep kids off of social media for as long as you can, do so. Teach them to share less, connect less with people. Prune their friends or followers. Set the strictest privacy setting that you can find, and recheck the settings, because sometimes when these platforms update, they will send it back to a default. So you always want to make sure you're checking and rechecking not only your privacy settings, but your kids if they're on social media, gaming platforms, anything that requires them to interact with others that they can't literally see in person. Get their passwords, know them, review their history, their posting history, the apps they're on, the games they play. Or are they chatting with people they don't know? What are they saying? What Australia discovered was that there was a manual that was going out on the dark web that was circulating on how pedophiles can exploit kids during the pandemic. And just next door at Fairfax County, they did a sting and arrested 30 men, ranging from age from like the early 20s to 70, that were exploiting children during the pandemic. So having the cyber safety conversation now is really, really important. So how can you defend against identity theft? Fraud alerts are for a year. They're free. They will slow down credit, but they don't stop it. A credit freeze will absolutely stop any credit being opened in your name. Credit locks are these weird products that credit reporting agencies now have, where you can just turn your credit on and off at a swipe on a phone app. What happens if it fails, right? So a fraud alert and a credit freeze, if they fail, you've got rights under federal law. Credit locks is a species of contract. There's a whole lot of fine print hidden behind a click wrap and a terms of service. Chances are you've got no right to do much if the credit lock fails. Fraud alerts, credit freezes, they're free. In Maryland, you can freeze the credit of a minor child or an adult you have guardianship over. Credit locks, last I heard, were $20 a month. So you be the judge as to what product you need if you decide you want to go this route. You always want to contact your security or fraud departments if there's an issue. If you have a demonstrated example of being a victim of identity theft, file for a police report. It will help you in fighting off debt collection later. You can also get a driver's license restriction from the MVA that says, I was a victim of identity theft. That way, if someone gets pulled over and they show an ID claiming to be you, the police know to ask more questions to make sure that really is you. And as we see on the slide, these are places that you would go to report instances of identity theft. So romance scams are getting to be a major, major problem during the pandemic. And it's, I think catfishing is another way. I think there's an MTV show that's called that. It's not entertainment. It is a massive con game that not only do you end up losing money, but there's just a lot of emotions involved, as you can imagine. They use social media, dating websites or apps or other venues to create a false identity for themselves. Then they find their victim. They'll use public data on you to hook you and reel you in by creating a profile that meets your profile. So if you're big into gardening, they're going to be gardeners. If you're big into knitting, guess what? They love fabric and, fiber arts, as they call it. The ultimate goal is always money. And in 2018, $210 million was reported as stolen. And remember, all scams are underreported. And because folks are now socially distancing, they're not really dating in person, scams on dating apps are thriving right now. And I don't know if folks watch Dr. Phil. I've been watching this one lately only because he did a story, a multi-part segment on this poor gentleman who thought he was marrying the love of his life, who was a nurse in Texas, and turned out the pictures belonged to a social media star twins from Sweden, and the scammer was a 20-something-year-old Nigerian man. So it was, watching this unfold on TV was just really painful to watch. But the script of the scam is pretty much the same. They find you, they sell themselves, they get you, if you're on a platform, they get you to pull off the platform and text. They won't show their face. So most often, I haven't heard of any instances where you actually get to do a video chat. And they'll claim, I'm in a foreign country, I have internet access issues, whatever their reason is, and maybe they're out on an oil rig, they're a doctor without borders. These are the big ones. I'm in the military, I'm on an oil rig with Doctors Without Borders kind of an organization. I've got spotty internet, I can't do video. They gain your trust, they give someone's picture that they are finding on social media so that they can give you a lot of updated pictures as the seasons change. They get your trust, they discuss marriage, they'll ask for intimate pictures so they can blackmail you later. And here comes the sting, and they'll suddenly need money, and it'll start small and build. They're stuck behind a closed border. I got to get out of here. I don't have enough money to bribe who I need to get through the border. I need money for a plane ticket. I'm going to come see you. I've got medical expenses and I've got gambling debt. I need a visa. I'm going to come see you, but I don't have any money for a visa. Whatever it is, they might even get you to set up a bank account for them to help them transfer money. And this is how you also become a money mule. And so it becomes a repeat comeback. And this poor gentleman on Dr. Phil was paying lawyers $1,500 a week to help them get married over the phone somehow. It was just, the scam was inexplicable and it was just heartbreaking. But they may even have someone who will pose as their friend to try and help you get your money back. And so the scammer will say, hey, my friend Kim will call you, and she can vouch for me, and you guys can set up how I'm going to get you the money back. And another scammer who's part of their same ring will then get in touch with you, and now you're actually dealing with two scammers. They want money wired, maybe money pack, gift cards. Those are just as good as cash. I've even heard of romance scammers getting cash mailed in envelopes or boxes. So then those are domestic, but obviously when they land, wherever they land in the US, you've got a money mule who's depositing it and transferring it out. So how can you detect it? Obviously, you take a picture, you put it in a Google image search. How many different ways does this photo pop up with how many different names? A lot of times you'll find out there's stock photos from models maybe. Does the online profile for the sweetheart change, or have they disappeared now that you're texting? If the person says, hey, I'm in the military, or I'm on an oil rig, whatever the story is, search that story with the word scam and see if you're seeing and hearing that same story. Obviously, you can avoid not getting scammed by not sending money. Don't open bank accounts for people that you don't know in person. Do your research, talk to a trusted friend, and trust your instincts. This one woman in Australia was taken by romance scammers 3 times in a row, to the point that she lost her entire retirement fund and ended up having to move in with her daughter. It was really, really heartbreaking there too. I'm going to quickly run through door-to-door scams. Oddly enough, there shouldn't be, this went out of order. This is where you would report your romance scams, would be the FBI or Western Union if you wired money, or to the gift card company. So door-to-door scams, there's not that many, thank God, because of COVID or the holidays. Energy scams, I've been hearing about. Folks coming to the door saying, hey, I'm from Pepco, I need to see your bill to see if you qualify for lower monthly payments. Maryland is a deregulated supply market, and so your biller will always be Pepco, or in some parts of the county, BG&E. The supplier could be anybody. And so they want to see your bill so they can get your account number and switch you without your knowledge, and get you to a new supplier, which will always end up costing more money. If someone comes to your door, ask them for their DPS issued permit to be a door-to-door salesman, do your research before you do anything, and don't give them anything that they should already know. So if Pepco is really coming to your door, they know your account number, they know how much you're paying, they don't need you to provide that information. New Jersey reported there was folks going door to door reporting that they were from WHO or CDC doing door-to-door tests. That hasn't happened here. Scotland was reporting that folks were going door to door and issuing fines for social distance violations and getting money at the door. Thankfully, that has not happened here. So if you do hear about any scams, always report them to us. We'll put out the alert. Woodchucks, as Kevin remembers from his time at OCP, are not just cute and furry. These are unlicensed home improvement contractors. They're storm chasers. They come to your home, they're up in your trees, trimming trees, cleaning up after a storm with the debris. And of course, they notice that there's problems with your roof, your gutter, your siding. What they want is a deposit. They'll take your money, they'll never return. They'll give you an invoice that just says invoice. They'll have a handwritten name and phone number. Who knows whose name and phone number it is. And or they might take the insurance money and not do the work. If they come back, these unlicensed contractors, they do substandard work, often unpermitted, and without having a license, you're not protected by the state's guarantee fund. So if you do need work done, always make sure there's a license. The license is issued to the person that's in front of you, because there's a lot of renters out there who rent out their licenses to unlicensed folks. And you just want to make sure you're getting estimates. Mail scams, quickly, mail marauders. We've talked about people stealing your checks and gift cards from your mail, and porch pirates, obviously, we talked about that. If you have been a victim, you want to report it to the U.S. Postal Inspection Service. Other kinds of scams that we've seen, if you go to our YouTube page, we actually have scam busters who've done programs on sweepstakes scams and how they've been able to bust the scam that's shown up in their mail. We've talked about these overpayment scams as well. These are where people pay you more than what you need for whatever they're buying on Craigslist, and they ask you for a refund. So they take your item, they give you a check, the check's no goods, and then you give them a refund for the difference. And here they've got your stuff and your money. So it's you want to make sure that any checks that arrive in the mail that has an extra for shipping, that you just be very, very wary about that. Money schemes, I love my little money mule there. Counterfeit goods. This week is World Anti-Counterfeiting Week. It's really, really important when you're buying goods or toys for the holidays that you make sure they're not counterfeit, that you're buying from a reputable retailer. 3M is suing companies right and left for claiming to sell 3M's N95 masks, but they're really counterfeits. We've talked about investment schemes. We've talked about money mules. Pet scams. People are stuck at home. They're looking online for pets, and folks are selling pets that don't exist, and they're never getting the pet at the airport. They're never getting the money back either. eBay motor scams with folks trying to, since they can work anywhere, they're moving out and to where there's more property, maybe on the coast. So they're selling jet skis, boats, cars, trucks, whatever it is, RVs that don't exist. And so this is a common theme where stock photos of other people's real items are being used to sell something that doesn't actually exist. Rental scams, we've heard about folks coming to us. They don't want to be able to go into people's homes. They're saying, well, because of COVID, you can't really come and see the place, but I've got good pictures and a video tour of the apartment. And so folks are being put into a remote inspection of a property, but when they want to rent it, and it turns out that that's really not the landlord, that's not really their home. And so they end up paying money. In fact, I read an article where someone actually moved in to the house, and now they're in a situation where the landlord is trying to get them evicted with a eviction moratorium, which is a really big mess. And we talked about the empty gift cards already, so got to be wary of those. Avoid gift card auction website. Based on my research, it seems that a lot of those are stolen gift cards, so you want to be wary of buying there. So that was kind of a fast and furious run through a lot of these topics. Our website's at the bottom. We have a lot more information on our website. We've got links to our social media there. We've got newsletters there, press releases. We have an A to Z library of information. And if you need to reach us in any way, that's an email address that you can use. But it's open up for any questions that anybody may have now.